Hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging with the Coach. How you living? I'm Coach B. Thanks for being here. Today I'm going to be talking about pinball machines, specifically my old pinball machine right here called Police Force, and I'm going to be introducing a new pinball machine to the lineup and give you the history about how that came to be. But first, let's talk about Police Force a little bit, right? So this particular machine is actually older than Missy. I'm not going to tell you how old it is, but if you know how old she is, you can kind of do the math. Maybe, maybe not. I actually bought it in 2003, so I've had it for 19 years. I was living in Maryland at the time, and me and JR drove out in his Blazer out to a place in Fairfax, Virginia, and picked it up, and it's been in my possession ever since. It's always been a load of fun to play, and you know, I go through cycles playing it, but when I do, I always enjoy it, right? So whenever the grandkids come over, when they come down into the game room, they play all kinds of games and whatnot. And when that happened last year at Christmas, one of my grandchildren, Zion, he discovered that there was a problem with Police Force, and I was totally unaware of it, right? So he went to go play the game. It wasn't working. He came over. He's like, "Coach, it's not working." I'm like, "Come on, buddy. Sure it is." He said, "Coach, it's not working." He was 100% right. I didn't know what it was, but every time he fired the game up, across the bottom of the panel, an error code would show up. I didn't know what that meant, so I had to call up some pinball wizards, maintenance guys, to figure out what that was. And the error code was basically saying that the module that retains the memory for the high score is shot. So when you fire up a pinball machine, one of the things that it tells you is the top 3, 4, maybe 5 high scorers on that machine. Well, in these older machines, there is a little compartment that houses 3 AAA batteries. I'll show it to you in a second. And the sole purpose of that compartment is to retain the memory for the high scores. It is the owner's responsibility, mine, to go in and change those batteries probably every 6 months or so, but I will go months without playing this guy, and obviously I did. The batteries died and were still inside the compartment and caused some possible damage. So if the machine can't cycle up, if it can't tell you right away who the high scorers are as part of the boot up, it just shuts down. So Zeba was a little disappointed. We were unable to play again. That was Christmas 2021. I knew I had a problem. I made some calls to better understand what the issue was. And a buddy of mine, Charles, came over, and if you take this whole back plane off, there's a motherboard in there with all the circuitry and stuff where the batteries go. We attempted to clean it off, replace the batteries and do that, and it still wouldn't work. That was in the springtime of this year, so I was really at a point I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the old Police Force, right? So fast forward a couple of months ago now, me and some buddies, we went to Las Vegas to celebrate my retirement from coaching. Mind you, that trip was supposed to be 2 years ago, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't get it in. So we went to Vegas recently to make up for that trip that didn't take place. Had a great time. We did a lot of hanging out. We played a lot of golf. It was extremely hot. We were teeing off at 5:40 in the morning when it was already 94, 95 degrees. By the time we made the turn and got on the back nine, in both instances, it was 104, 105. And people tell you about that desert heat, that dry heat, humidity, non-humidity. It doesn't matter. It was 105 degrees on the back nine, very hot. But the guys hung in there. We had a really good time. Myself, Johnny, LB, and Lou. And we had some friends in Vegas, like John that we golfed with, him and his friends. So we had a really, really good time. While we were in Vegas, we went to a place called the Pinball Hall of Fame on the recommendation of a friend of mine who's also a co-worker in San Diego. Shout out to Jeff Reynolds. He told me about this Hall of Fame. And here's the thing. I've been to Vegas 20 times before the trip a couple of months ago. 20. Never knew this Hall of Fame existed, number one. And more importantly, I surely didn't know that it was in Las Vegas. So when Jeff told me about it, I was kind of geeked, and I talked to the guys. I'm like, come on, we're going to spend an afternoon there. And we had a blast. The place was really, really big. They had historic pinball machines. I mean, the old box machines with just 3 slots to show you the score, all the way up to some brand new super duper machines. Or we got one here I'm going to show you. And it was just an amazing place, right? So we spent a couple hours there playing. And I would say the second half of the visit there, I asked LB and Johnny to play a variety of games and give me their input, and I would take pictures of different machines and get the specifics of them so that I could look up machines, because remember, I'm thinking I couldn't fix police force, and I really do like having a pinball machine in the game room. So my thought was, okay, you know, I got to turn the corner and get something new. So we got a bunch of information, played some amazing games. The technology on these 2022 machines is really something special. And we had a good time. Everybody was really competitive. So one of the things that I learned from talking to the people that run the Hall of Fame, their suggestion when I told them about police force was to pull the motherboard out, put it in a padded envelope, ship it to them. They in turn would rewire that entire motherboard so that it didn't need the battery compartment, because the newer machines don't do it that way anymore, and they would ship it back. Now obviously we couldn't talk about pricing and such because they would actually have to see the motherboard before we did all that. So after I got back from Vegas, I called up the closest pinball shop that I'm aware of in my area, which is in Richmond. I talked to this guy before, his name is Charles, and he was the one that told me what the error code meant. So I called Charles back and I was like, I went to Vegas, I saw this is what they told me, what do you think? And he said, well, you could do that, or you could bring the machine to me and I can fix it. I'm like, come on, man, that's not an option. I can't bring this big machine to Richmond on the hope that he could fix it. So I was really about to give up on it, and I told Dee that I'd already coordinated with some people like 1-800-JUNK that, you know, come by periodically when we want to get rid of stuff, and we're just going to give it away. And Charles said, well, you need to talk to Ed. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Who's Ed? And he said, oh, Ed's the guy that does pinball maintenance in Fredericksburg. In my mind, I'm thinking, you know, Charles, this would have been some really good information 6 months ago. So he gives me a phone number. Call this guy, and his name is Ed. That's it. Like, all right. I call the number. Guy answers. It's Ed. I explained the situation to Ed. He's like, yeah, I can come over. I can fix that. I'm familiar with police force. So sure enough, Ed came over, and what he did was, I'll show you the compartment that went bad. I still have it in here because we don't use it anymore. This is the actual compartment that went bad. And as you can see, it's got 3 slots in it for the 3 AA batteries, but one of the terminals and the post that connects back to the circuit board were gone, which is why it didn't work for me and Charles. So what Ed did was, he just disabled this puppy altogether, put a new one in, and didn't attach it to the motherboard, but rather he has it laying on the service tray that's inside. So if the owner inadvertently forgets to change the batteries, it won't disrupt the gameplay because it's not connected to the motherboard. It'll still keep the memory of the high scores, but the only thing that would happen if I don't replace the batteries is it just won't power up. I know what it's going to be. Change the batteries, we're good to go. So not only did Ed take care of that, but while he was here, he's like, hey, I can do a full tune-up on this thing while I'm in there. And he went in, and it was amazing because it hadn't been tuned up in 19 years. He oiled it, he worked on the, changed out some springs, did all those cool things, and police force was like new again, at least new for me. One of the things that he and I discovered, though, is there's a, you won't be able to see this really in the video, but there's a glass that's on top of the play field. And, you know, it's as long as the game is itself. Well, we noticed some hairline fractures in the glass. And, you know, Ed cautioned, like, hey, if that thing breaks, because it's tempered glass, it will shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. It'll be down inside some of the crevices of the game. It probably won't play well. He told me, because, you know, he does this kind of thing at his residence, that he had one shatter in his hands in his living room. And his wife, who was here when he was fixing this machine, she told me that it was weeks, longer than a month later, she was still running into shards of glass in the carpet because that's how fine it's going to get. So on Ed's recommendation, even though we got it back together, his recommendation was you got to replace the glass. I'd never done that before, but he gave me some information. I found the company that he gave me on the internet, ordered the glass, which was $50 for one sheet of glass, but the box that it came in, the container, was $50 also. And I called the company. I'm like, that's a lot for shipping, isn't it? But because of the size of the glass and the awkwardness of it, it can only be shipped in one type of box. I'm like, fine, we're good with it. We're good with it. Bought that. So it came, I opened up the box very carefully. I took the glass out, cleaned it on the underside first because I knew I wouldn't be able to get to that anymore. Carefully removed the old glass that was covering the playfield on police force, moved that out of the way, then carefully installed the new glass. And once I was able to lock that down, I cleaned the top of that glass, and it looked really, really good. It was like new again, no scratches. I felt pretty good. I then fired up police force and played a couple of games, and I got to tell you, it was a lot of fun. I hadn't played it since before Zebo found out that it wasn't even working, and to get back in there and play again and with all the clean components, and it was super duper responsive. It was almost like, you know, 2003 all over again. Had a really, really, really good time doing that, right? So I'm really thankful to Ed for coming through and taking care of that, because if Charles doesn't tell me about Ed, police force wouldn't be here. It just wouldn't be here because I couldn't fix it. I knew what was wrong with it, and I wasn't going to carry it somewhere to get fixed. So now that I've got police force back, the dilemma is I'd already seen some new games while we were in Vegas and was still quite interested in those. So I started making some calls, you know, and I found the game that I wanted. It came down to two choices, right? The two choices were either Guardians of the Galaxy or The Mandalorian. And I don't know, there may be a hint somewhere in the frame that tells you what the game was I got. Maybe not, you'll figure it out. Either way, I'm gonna show you. So once I found the game, I found a dealer, I called him up, everything was set and square to go, but the guy we kept missing each other, we couldn't connect. And I'm thinking, like, for the money that you know, we're gonna spend on this, he should be more responsive. He wasn't a bad business person, but he just wasn't responsive. And so over a period of 10 days of back and forth via emails and texts and stuff, I couldn't get him here, and he wouldn't answer in the definitive when I could come to his place in Maryland, which was not too far from where LB lives. So at some point, I just got frustrated with all that, and I found another dealer, this one also in Maryland, but really on the line between Maryland and Delaware, you know, to get the game, because this particular guy was more responsive. Instead of paying several $100s to have him deliver it, obviously there's no charge if I come pick it up. So that's what I decided to do, and I bought the game from him. And I can tell you now that the name of that game that I bought is actually The Mandalorian. Let me tell you a little bit about The Mandalorian. This Mandalorian game, this very one here, was built in April of 2022. That's just how new it is. So once I knew I wasn't going to get the machine from the first place because of all the confusion, and we did pick the place out by Maryland Eastern Shore, it's called Mad Pinball. And Johnny was good enough to come over and spend the day. We went all the way out there. It was about a 3.5-hour ride.
So Myrtle, once we're at Myrtle, I'll hit him up. Yeah. We'll talk to him.
Talk to him, just see how he's doing, check in on him, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I know he's kind of been.
We stopped by our favorite spot, Rise Up Coffee, to get some coffee and some breakfast. We continued the journey out there. We met Rob, who is the owner of Mad Pinball. Rob loaded up the pinball machine in the truck. We came all the way back. We got it here to the house and put it together, and we started from there. So big shout out to Rob at Mad Pinball, who also gave us some pretty cool t-shirts for me and for Dee and for Johnny, and a bag as well. Very responsive, glad that he was able to come through for us, and I will put his contact information in the description in the bottom if you're ever interested in buying a pinball machine. I would highly recommend Mad Pinball. The technology that comes on these new games is really, really amazing. It has Wi-Fi on it, right? It has an HD content screen, and what that means is the game is licensed by Lucasfilm and Disney. It's a legitimate Mandalorian game. I'm not going to give anything away for those of you that haven't followed The Mandalorian, but I really love the show. It's quite unique in what it does, and they've captured the essence of the show and put it here. And what this HD screen does is, depending upon where you are in the game, it starts playing clips from the actual seasons of the show that align to where you are in the game. I don't know how they do that, but it's really, really quite impressive. They have something called Insider Connect, which is an app because the machine has Wi-Fi. So one of the things that I had to do during the setup was pair it with the Wi-Fi here in the game room, and then you take Insider Connect, you scan the QR code, and you create an account. And now, if I activate that before each game, it's tracking scores, successes, and all those kinds of things. You get XP playing this game like you would if you were doing a PlayStation game. And you can play along with other people who are also connected via Insider Connect, and that's by Stern. Stern is the manufacturer of this particular game. And Insider Connect isn't unique to The Mandalorian, but it's paired with multiple new pinball games. It's got an equalizer in it. It took me probably 45 minutes just to get the sound the way I want it. A subwoofer in the bottom that's pointing to the floor, and 2 high fidelity stereo speakers built in on both sides of the HD screen. So once you get the equalizer set, when you're playing, you feel the music, and it's all themed from The Mandalorian.
For the super jackpot. The assurance I give is this: I will act in my own self-interest, which at this time involves your cooperation and benefit. Super jackpot is lit.
All of the different characters are here, right? So you got Mando, you got Grogu, Boba Fett, Ashura, you got Gideon, Cara Dune, Kuiil, IG-11, who was the like the robot with the super smart sense of humor, was in there. You know, you got Trapper in there. Grief Karga, who is Carl Weathers' character, is in the game. So as you play The Mandalorian, he's talking to you based on your successes or failures or challenges or whatever, and telling you what you got to do next. So he has narrated this game much the way a pro athlete or commentator would narrate Madden or MLB 22 The Show or NBA 2K. That's what Carl Weathers from the show has done here, just giving it that much more realism, right? One thing that was a challenge, I won't say it was a challenge, one thing that we had to talk about here was the cost, all right? So let's do that for a second. When I first talked to Dee about it, and I said, hey, I'm gonna get another pinball machine, you know, she's like, okay, where's it gonna go? I said, in the game room next to the other, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, how much is it going to cost? So I told her, and this was her reaction.
$1,000. Do you know how many more things you could have bought with $1,000 than one pinball machine? That is absolutely insane. Unbelievable. I can't fathom dishing out that kind of money for a pinball machine.
So, you know, as you can see, the number, I think the number caught her by surprise. Probably caught me by surprise too, because I got to tell you, some of the machines that I had on the list from when me and LB and Lou and Johnny was playing, I immediately took off the list once I got home and found out how much they cost, right? So there are 3 levels of pinball machine in the modern era. This is the lowest cost element. There's a mid one, and then there's a super high one. I'll just say the super high one is in the $12,000 to $14,000 range. That's the high. You'll have to do your own research if you really want to know how much. This is called the Mandalorian Pro. That is the model that this is. You want to know how much it costs? I can just tell you it was a few bucks. But if you want the specifics, you will have to look that up. The changes between the different levels of the game, sometimes they're really not that dramatic. And, you know, in terms of what is in the high-end game that isn't in the average game. One of the things that always changes with each of the three, though, is what's called the game art. So the art that's on the play field, right? The art that you see when you look around the machine, it's not the same with each of the three levels. It changes with each one, right? So one of the things that I've gone and done is I bought 2 blades. Now, the blades are the art that goes on the inside of the sides of the pinball machine. Right? So if you look at a regular pinball machine when you're playing, down the sides, it's just black, right? Because it's part of the case. Well, blades are individual pieces of art that were made to fit the exact specs of the machine or the theme of the game that you're playing. And initially when I went to look at some blades from Ando, some were recommended, but they always had one flaw. And I'm not going to give anything away with the show, but here's the flaw. There is a character who's part of the show, not anymore, but this person was part of the show, and for whatever reason, this person got booted by Disney. And because this game is sanctioned by, Disney and Lucasfilm, that particular character isn't represented anywhere in the game as it's purchased. But you can find blades in certain places. I found the blades that I bought in Portugal, where literally I went online, I found them, I ordered them, and they were shipped here from Portugal. And if you think about it, it's like canvas. So it's canvas and it's really detailed art, same color scheme as the game is here, but with these blades, it had every character in it. So I'm not going to tell you which of the characters that got booted by Disney is on there, but it was important to me because I like to show that much to have all the characters represented. I don't think this person should have been booted from the show, because they were such a key part of the success of the show and a key part of Mandalorian's success, of Mando's success in protecting Grugo. So I was a little disjointed when this person got booted, but really happy that I could find blades in Portugal that fit. So with those, you had to be really, really careful, and it's got an adhesive on the back. You have to peel it. Obviously you have to remove the entire top of the game, and getting it set up just right probably took an hour just to get both sides right, but I am so glad that I did, because I've got that person, that missing character in the blades. I'm not going to tell you which one. You really have to look at the game to understand what that really, really means. So what we're going to do today before we wrap up is I'm going to have Zebo come down, because he kind of spearheaded this whole resurgence in pinball. I want him to come here and play the Mandalorian. I want to get his thoughts on it. We're gonna mic him up and let him tell you what he thinks. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about the multi-cade. This game here in the middle is just your traditional video game. It's 23 different games. Frogger, all the different Pac-Mans, regular Pac-Man, Mr. Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man, Galaga. It's got a ton of games in it, so that's still here. So what I want to do next, over the course of the fall, is I want to have a few of the guys over. I want to have an arcade night, and the winner, to win the game, or to be considered a winner, at the end of the night, that person has to have their name listed in the top score of something. It can be the top score of Police Force, it can be in the top scores here of The Mandalorian, or it can be one of the top scores in any of the 23 games that are in the video arcade, the multi-cade. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go get Zebo. We're going to bring him down. We're going to get some tests in and see what he thinks about it. All right? Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I told you that we were going to have Zoe and Zion, or as I like to call them, Zebo and Muffin here. They're down here now. No, that's Muffin. And the reason that we're here, particularly for this young fella, is like I told you, he is the person that discovered the fault with Police Force and all the things we did to get Police Force fixed. So I want him to be the first person to test out Mandalorian. Are you ready to test this game, buddy?
Yes.
The audience is over here. There you go. Tell him what your name is.
Zion.
Zion? Yes. What are we going to do today, Zion?
Play a game.
What kind of game?
Pinball.
Pinball. What's the name of the pinball game?
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
And what's the name of the guy on your shirt? You remember?
Grogu.
Grogu, right? Yeah. Your sister has Grogu on as well, right? Yeah. So we're all wearing a themed shirt. So we're going to start this game. You're going to play the first game of Mandalorian while your sister tests out Police Force. Are you ready to do that?
Yeah.
All right, let's get it.
Now press the button.
Press the button, buddy.
No, pull this
Pull it or push the button. Now here's your flippers, remember, right? There you go, the ball's moving. Ball's moving. Wait, follow the ball. Yours starts here. Can you see it? Pull it. And your flippers are here. Attaboy, you getting it?
Yes. So I got the these buttons?
Yes.
Oh, first I pull this, then follow the ball. I can't let the ball get out.
That's right. Good job, buddy. And I'm gonna clap. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so you played your first Mandalorian game. What did you think?
Good.
Good?
Yeah.
Look over this way, buddy. Was the ball moving fast?
Yes.
Did you see it?
Yes.
So you liked it?
Yes.
So now what I'm gonna do, we're gonna switch up. Okay, Zion, you just played Police Force. Did you like it?
Yes.
What do you think your sister thought?
Zoe, what did you thought about it? I thought that it was like a cool game and I like to win.
Zoe says she thought it was a cool game and she likes to win. Both these guys are really good winners. I thank you both for helping me with this video. At some point, we're gonna do an arcade night where I'm gonna have some people over. Maybe LB, Ed. We'll get a couple people over. I don't know, maybe Rick plays a little pinball. What do you think about Claude? You think Claude plays pinball?
Yeah.
It's possible. Anyway, we're gonna have an arcade night. We're gonna do these two as well as the multi-cade. And the only way you can win is to leave with your name in the top 3 in any one of those games. That sound like fun?
Yes.
We're gonna do that. So for now, we thank you guys for hanging with the coach. This has been a really fun video to make. Glad you guys helped me out. Can I get a hug? That's my girl. Hug, big boy. And let's tell everybody, see you next time.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, we didn't do it for real.
Huh?
We didn't do it for real.